Homelander, or as Billy Butcher would say, Homelander, the strongest soup in Amazon's hit show The Boys. It's clear that he's head and shoulders above most, if not every super being within his series, but would he be able to crack the top echelon of heroes within the far more intense world of One Punch Man? Today, we're going to find out if the narcissistic Homelander could become an S-class hero, or if he's just simply a bloody S-class cunt. But what makes an S-class hero before we go through this process? Well, it's simple. You have to be strong. Very strong in fact. Very strong by the standards of One Punch Man, which is no easy feat. First, you have to consider that the lowest ranked S-class hero is Pretty Prisoner, and while he may be stronger than one or two heroes placed above him, his lowest ranking still identifies him as the usual power target by the Hero Association standards. However, Pretty Prisoner is more powerful than Homelander, so does that automatically tear up the chances of Homelander making it into the S-class? Well, not necessarily. You see, generally speaking, and while not completely accurate, the Hero Association takes value in identifying that someone who is able to defeat a demon-level monster alone could technically be within the realm of S-class power. When looking at this panel on screen, it shows what the association usually expects from the disaster levels and the hero response required to deal with said issue. So if Homelander can defeat a demon-level threat alone, then it's possible he may sneak in and become the new lowest ranked S-class as the freshest addition to their prestigious group. But there's a little bit more to it than just that. Nuances which include association recruiters, witnesses, and of course, a my mask. We'll get to all that in just a bit though. So what's Homelander got going for him? Despite not being one of the strongest Superman-esque characters in fiction, he still boasts a formidable picture of quickness, strength, and durability. Homelander can outspeed people using automatic weapons with his incredible movement and has shown hypersonic speeds and reactions in high-stress environments with controlled precision. He's also proved himself able to tank large chemical explosions without much, if any damage at all, and no-cells man-made weaponry 7 days a week. The official art and making of the Boys book from Amazon also states that Homelander is capable of leveling an entire city within minutes, and judging by what offense we've seen from him and how he can overpower people like Maeve, Soldier Boy and more, this statement likely has some weight to it. I don't believe he can throw a punch harder than Tank Top Master or Pretty Prisoner can, yet I don't think he'd be worlds away if we go by the first 2 seasons of the anime. Stated to be the strongest man in the world within the Boys, it should be clear that Homelander packs a punch which would certainly upset many a monster. Added to this, Homelander has the ability to fly and can use heat vision strong enough that rivals Butcher's on Temp V, which was enough to cause damage to the very resilient Soldier Boy. These added abilities will no doubt be additional advantages for him to utilize within One Punch Man's Earth, and ones he is comfortable with. However, on the flip side to all of this, it's shown that other supers who are around his strength level can inflict harm to him, and that if his durability is tested enough by said beings who hold enough potency to damage multiple city blocks, he can accumulate damage and face a fatal conclusion if it continues. It's also clear that many demon level monsters within One Punch Man can operate on or above his speed in battle while possessing superior strength to go with it, meaning that for all of his own power, he'll be in grave danger against monsters past a certain level. So, let's run the simulation. Homelander from the first few seasons is in the swing of things and is in the process of making a play that will see him take control of Vought International. In this period, he hasn't gone completely off the rails and started trying to become the sole leader of the United States yet, but he's still his classic menacing self behind the scenes with an eye for power, popularity, and fresh milk. Some things never change, even in the latest season. But hey, I can't blame you, Homelander. I'd also hit the pause button on National Domination to get some FaceTime with Firecracker's boo. Somewhere during early seasons, Homelander, let's say a soup with the ability to move between different universes, makes a play for the Seven, and during the event, manages to lure Homelander through a portal that drops him within the world of One Punch Man to get him out of the way for good. So, fast forwarding through a lot of narrative hoops, swings and roundabouts to get to where we need to be for this video, where would a powerful, manipulative Homelander land, no pun intended, in the Hero Association rankings, after setting his sights on establishing himself as their world's new superpower. No doubt he'd want to be in the illustrious S-Class to appease his own vanity and grasp some measure of authority, so how does he get there? And could he? The first way is simple enough. Defeat a disaster level demon threat. There's no two ways about it. This needs to be done for him to make his case. And let me tell you, it is possible for Homelander, but it's very difficult. You see, from what we know of demon level monsters within One Punch Man, there's a smaller selection that Homelander could confidently take on. Demon level heavyweights such as Deep Sea King and G4 are too much for his power set. If Homelander were to engage with a monster of their level, it'd either end up with him requiring assistance or requiring a hospital bed, or worse. They are simply too fast, too strong, and too much of a handful for Homelander to deal with. But they're not the only demon threat levels around. For Homelander to enter into the S-Class through this method, he needs a few things to line up. First of all, he needs the opportunity to fight against the right type of demon threats. Homelander would have success against monsters such as Freehugger, Fist Fight Jin, the Three Crows seen in the Super Fight tournament, and Macho Daikon, who was even defeated by A-Class hero Smileman. Then you can make a case for him being able to defeat even the likes of Senior Centipede and Raffle Sidon under the right conditions, further bolstering his chances if he can encounter demon levels who fall into this lower bracket of power. But like I mentioned just a moment ago, if an A-Class hero defeated a demon threat, how come he isn't in the S-Class? Well, this is when it comes down to association recruitment and witnesses. Not only would Homelander need to somehow know the right battles to pick, but he'd need numerous witness statements to speak of his victory or hero association surveillance of his efforts to make them aware of his power. A strong display from Homelander against a demon graded monster would potentially have recruiters of the Hero Association out to personally invite him to take the hero test, where they'd likely introduce him as S-Class, since his public persona experience within the Seven should fetch him high scores on the mental side, even if he doesn't actually apply that attitude all the time. And his physical prowess should be enough to scrape him into the category of S-Class, even if just barely. Or, depending on the executive, they may try to fast track him into the S-Class as a way to help build their own reputation and legacy within their role, since staff can receive plaudits for directly scouting heroes who go on to perform admirably. Just to quickly throw in as an afterthought here, there's also the idea regarding this aspect that a Maya Mask would be involved in the decision of allowing Homelander immediate promotion into S-Class, such as how Genos was in Season 1. However, a Maya Mask would be more likely to greenlight it via this method as opposed to someone from A-Class jumping up, where he seems to be far more picky with his decisions, since even Iayan hasn't even been called up, who is a great hero in his own right. Not to mention, in a world like One Punch Man, strong talent for potential S-Class hero work is always sought after. So, is S-Class possible early? Yeah, it is. Homelander just needs to defeat one, or more if circumstances don't line up, demon level threats within the scope of the Hero Association's knowledge, or accompanying word of mouth from witnesses who report his efforts in ways which reach official channels. Given that Homelander can shoot lasers from his eyes and fly, it might not be as hard as one thinks to earn recognition, since those factors can help him stand out, as most One Punch Man heroes are just very fast and strong without any particularly flashy powers. However, if he bites off more than he can chew and ends up dealing with a mid or higher tier of demon level monster, then he will likely be in for a rude awakening which knocks the steps right off his climb into S-Class. But what if he can't find the right conditions to squeeze into S-Class fluidly? Well, all hope is not lost. And that's because without that path opening up for him, Homelander would still most definitely be an A-Class hero. And not only that, but a very strong one. Climbing through the ranks of A-Class would be fairly easy for Homelander, with the real challenge presenting itself in the form of Atomic Samurai's disciples, and even more so, a Maya Mask who guards the gate into S-Class. Once Homelander was an A-Class hero, it'd only be a matter of time before he defeated enough disaster level Tiger, Wolf, and maybe even lower tier demon threats to have a shot at entering S-Class. And since you don't need to fight other heroes to rank up, Whether or not Homelander could defeat Atomic's disciples is a non-issue, but he certainly would not be able to beat a My Mask, which means that he can't brute force his way into S-Class regardless. Does that close the door for him though? Interestingly enough, I don't believe it does. Homelander, as we all know, is very aware of how to play hero politics, and is certainly well versed in playing up a much more heroic persona than the one which actually exists within his darkened soul. Homelander wouldn't need to defeat a My Mask to make it into S-Class if he were not able to bypass a My Mask somehow via the executive or recruiter route I mentioned first, but he would need to convince a My Mask that he deserves to move up from A rank. So, with many monster wins under his belt, including demon level threats, could Homelander be granted passage within the S-Class? I think it's possible. Homelander is socially savvy and charismatic enough to convince a whole country, the world even, that he's a great hero who cares deeply for the people under his protection. And when he has to play nice, he knows how to, even if he doesn't like it. Granted, later seasons of The Boys write him out to be less intelligent in recent times, but this Homelander is more of a season 1 to 3 version where I felt his writing was better. He wouldn't take long to figure out that he's not the top dog anymore in this new world, and while it would certainly gnaw at his psyche, I think he'd be able to keep the persona enough until he can worm his way into the S-Class, where he'd then try to find out if he can somehow grow stronger like those above him. With the ability to fly and how presentable he looks in his outfit, I think a My Mask would initially pass Homelander on the eye test for being someone who is strong, good looking, and seemingly bearing heroic values, even if he doesn't think that Homelander is as strong as himself or other S-Class heroes. For a My Mask, visuals play a big role, and if Homelander could convince him with his public-facing persona and clean smile, a My Mask would believe that Homelander could be a worthwhile addition to the S-Class, especially when considering he doesn't even hold high opinion of some current S-Class heroes as it is already. A My Mask has high standards, but judging by his attitude toward existing S-Class, he's not above lowering his standards if the circumstances line up in his view. And if Homelander's mix of power, performance, charismatic trickery, and dazzling visuals couldn't all combine to give a My Mask enough reason to place him in S-Class, then A-Class would be his station until he keeps pressing the issue with those previously said conditions repeatedly. Or it'd be A-Class forever if the world of One Punch Man eventually whittled him down mentally, physically, or both. There's also a chance a My Mask could see through Homelander's facade, but that doesn't necessarily mean a My Mask would decline him either, since numerous S-Class heroes bear somewhat problematic aspects to their personalities as it is. So, could Homelander become an S-Class hero within One Punch Man? Yes, he certainly could. However, it'd take very specific conditions to happen, with the process either being somewhat simple if luck is on Homelander's side, or more convoluted and requiring social finesse if those opening demon level battles are not kind to him and away from hero association surveillance, thus sparking a much more likely climb from A-Class. The most possible route of these scenarios is A-Class, where he'd then need to enact a plan to rise up and find a way past a My Mask's judgment. Although, if he did become S-Class, well, he'd most likely be the weakest alongside Zombie Man, yet he may be able to climb above the likes of Putty Putty Prisoner and some others in the rankings if he pulls off a marketing and public appearance masterclass with how he brands himself, since the rankings aren't completely indicative of power, but other factors too. What happens once he's there though? Well, bluntly speaking, he's in for a world of pain when dealing with formidable demon level monsters and above, as expected from S-Class, which will have him taking a lot of losses. Maybe even more losses than Tank Top Master, which would be impressive. However, who's to say what would happen if Homelander became inspired to train within this new world after realizing how much he has left to improve in comparison to these new heroes? Perhaps he wouldn't become any more powerful, but maybe he would. Who's to say that 100 press-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats and a 10km run couldn't build up the narcissistic Homelander into a more formidable S-Class hero over time? Now that's an interesting thought. We saw how strong Frieza became in Dragon Ball Super when he finally decided to train seriously after a lifetime of employing only his natural power. Does a concept like that exist for Homelander, since he's just so used to naturally being the strongest in his own world? And what would a dedicated training effort in this verse do for him? Could he train his way to surpass the likes of Prisoner or even Darkshine eventually? Or would he be forever beneath them? Those are questions I'd like to see you answer in the comments. Thanks for watching, be sure to like the video and sub for more content revolving around the world of One Punch Man.